Well, of course, we are celebrating Father's Day today, but tomorrow we here in the United States are also celebrating another holiday, and that's the holiday of Juneteenth, which we heard about this morning in our words of integration and guidance. For some of you, Juneteenth may seem like it's a newer holiday, but it has been celebrated by people in this country every single year since 1865. Because it was on June 19th of 1865, that's how we get the name Juneteenth, June 19th. It was on June 19th of 1865 that all of the enslaved black Americans in this country were emancipated, set free. Now, if you know your history, you know that President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation 2 years prior, in 1863. So why did it take 2 years to free everyone? Well, many of those southern states, those states that had been under Confederate rule, they either didn't get the news of the Emancipation Proclamation, or probably they just didn't share that information with their slaves. But on June 19th, 1865, Union troops arrived in Texas, the very last state in the Confederacy that still had slaves, and they declared that all the slaves were free. This has been celebrated every single year since then, but 2 years ago, President Biden signed into law the Juneteenth National Day of Freedom, making Juneteenth a federal holiday in the United States, which is such a wonderful thing. But as you all know, we have people in this country who don't think we should be talking about race. And they especially don't want teachers teaching these race theories and talking about slavery in the classroom, because they're worried that white students might feel bad or guilty for being white. Now, I believe that it is very important that we teach and know and acknowledge all the parts of our nation's history, even those painful ones, not to make people feel bad or guilty, but so that we can learn from them, so that we can grow and heal as a nation and continue to build a more just country. Now, if you read the Bible, you know there are slaves throughout the Bible. In Jesus' day, there were slaves. But notice, in today's gospel reading for the third Sunday after Pentecost, Jesus says to the apostles, "This is your mission. Go and set the captives free." Now, if you know where we are in this story, Jesus is 30 years old, and he's just beginning his ministry at the age of 30. He's out there healing people and teaching, and as we heard in today's story, he's calling together his team, his 12 apostles. And if you notice, he doesn't call rabbinical students or religious scholars. He calls regular people, farmers and fishermen. And he says to them, I'm going to anoint you. I'm going to anoint you to go into the towns and villages and to declare good news to the poor and the oppressed, to set the captives free, and to declare the kingdom is on its way. What he meant by that was for them to go into these towns and say to the poor and the marginalized and the oppressed, guess what? We're building a new world. And in this world, the last are going to be first. And you, the least of these, you're going to be the most important. Now, if you noticed, Jesus said to the disciples before he sent them out, if you go in any town or village and you are not welcome there and your message is not received, just shake the dust off your feet and move on. So my question for you is, why would this message not be well received in some towns or villages? Why wouldn't people want to hear this good news for the poor and the marginalized and the oppressed and the slaves? Why? Well, obviously we see in our modern world not much has changed. There are places in our own country today where people don't want to hear this. And we know in our lifetimes, people who have spoken out for more and more rights, for a more just world, they have put their lives in danger. And we know people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King lost their lives for trying to build this more just world. And I thought to myself, why is it that people who enjoy so many freedoms in their life don't want to extend those freedoms to other people? Why they feel threatened when those very same freedoms are extended to others? So, for example, there are people who can freely marry the person they love. They never have to worry about their marriage right being taken away. They can freely walk hand in hand with the person they love without ever worrying that they're going to be beaten up or threatened for doing so. They can freely make changes to their body if they want to get breast augmentation or hair plugs, and yet they want to control what other people can do to their bodies. And they can freely go into any library, and they can find hundreds of books that tell their story and affirm their humanity. And yet they want to remove the few books that do so for others. They get to enjoy these freedoms. Why won't they extend these very same freedoms to others? I think it's because they're afraid. And I think it's because they feel if I extend these freedoms to other people, the freedoms I enjoy, then these freedoms and privileges are no longer special to me. You know, I used to hear that with the fight for marriage equality. I would hear people say, well, we can't allow gays to get married because that's going to threaten our traditional marriage. It's somehow going to lessen or diminish our traditional marriage if we let others get married. Now, at our Pride event here in Douglas at the beginning of the month, we had so many wonderful people who stopped by our church booth. And one of them was a woman who was wearing a great T-shirt. And the T-shirt said, "Equal rights for others don't mean fewer rights for you. It's not pie." That's what the church said. Equal rights for others doesn't mean fewer rights for you. As we heard in our words of integration and guidance this morning, those words from Emma Lazarus, whose words are on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, which welcomes all to our country. She said, "None of us are truly free until all of us are free." And so, my friends, some of you may have great freedom. Some of you watching online may live a free life. But I guarantee you there are people who are sitting here in this church who live in this community and in the communities where you live who do not enjoy those very same freedoms. And so you're not really free until they're free, because as we know, we're all one. That was Jesus' point. He was trying to say we are all one another. We're all responsible for one another. That's what he meant by the kingdom. When he says, announce the kingdom is on its way, when we hear kingdom, we think of the royal family. That's not what he was talking about. And it's why we in the Progressive Church, we spell the word kingdom. Because that's really more in line with what Jesus was getting at. He was trying for us to build a world where all are kin, where we all recognize that we're all related to one another. We're all one with one another. A world where there's no separation, no division. Everybody is equal. Everyone enjoys the same freedoms. That's what he meant, that the kingdom is on its way. Now, for people like Jesus and Gandhi and Dr. King, they believed this world, this beloved community, was possible. It wasn't some lofty utopian dream that could never really happen. They believed in it, and so do I. Now, I'm not someone that looks through the world with rose-colored glasses, but I have been paying attention to history, especially in my lifetime. Do you know that in just our lifetime, in just the past 60 years, more freedoms have been given to people than in the entire history of the human race? Do you know how grateful we should be that we were born into this little blip of time in human history where more and more people have been afforded rights? Now, I speak with all of you who are very worried. You're very concerned about what's happening in our country. And I'm not telling you not to be. We do need to remain vigilant, but we also need to remain hopeful. Our friend John Pavlovitz, who was here a few months ago, shared with us that there are far more people working for justice and freedom in our country than those who aren't. So he said, don't let hopelessness trend in your head. I don't let hopelessness trend in my head. Because when I was a young man, people like me couldn't be married. And when I was a young man, people like me could not be standing on this altar as the pastor of a Christian church. And so I'm here afforded these privileges because of the people before me who struggled, who had their lives threatened, who suffered and died so that I could be given these freedoms. And so it is my duty to make sure that others are extended those same freedoms for as long as I'm living and breathing. And that's why the front cover of your bulletin today says, Sarah laughed. Because as we heard in our Old Testament reading today, Sarah is told in her old age that she's going to have a baby. And she laughs. How can that be? It's ridiculous. Okay? But do you understand the symbolism of that story? As long as we're alive, no matter what our age is, as long as we're living and breathing, God is calling us to continue to birth new life, to continue to birth this new world into being. The kingdom of heaven is on its way, and we've been building it, and we will continue to build it. And so, my friends, in this season of Pentecost, where the Spirit is at work, and on this weekend where we are celebrating Juneteenth, Emancipation Day, let us continue to be people of light and justice and freedom and hope, so that together we can continue to build that kingdom of heaven here on earth, a just world for all people. Namaste.
Hello, everybody. This is Sal Sapienza, and I'm so excited to share with all of you that I've written a brand new book. The book is called Childish Thinking: How the Church Keeps Us Stuck in Sunday School. Now, the title Childish Thinking comes from Christian scripture, where we hear that if we wish to grow in spiritual understanding, then we must let go of childish ways of thinking. And yet so many Christians today, even after years of Bible study and Sunday services, still have a very elementary understanding of their faith. They still understand God as some old man with a long gray beard. They think heaven is a place up in the clouds with pearly gates, that the devil is some red guy with horns and a pitchfork, and that hell is a fiery place below the earth. Those are things that we tell children. None of those descriptions appear anywhere in the Bible. And so in childish thinking, I try to dispel many of those misnomers, and I explore topics such as God, Jesus, heaven, hell, sin, prayer, and resurrection from the higher perspectives of ancient Christian mystics and contemporary progressive theologians. After each chapter, there are prayers for quiet contemplation and questions for personal reflection and journal writing. Come learn how you can let go of old ways of thinking and begin to see things with new eyes. Come and learn how you can finally graduate from Sunday school. The book is available now on Amazon, and you can read the entire introduction at childishthinking.faith.